Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Israel's parliament, the Knesset, has convened for its winter session. The government has a packed agenda with dozens of proposed laws on the docket. Among them is the Basic Law of Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people. This proposed legislation lists the state of Israel as the national homeland of the Jewish people and declares that the right to self-determination within the state of Israel is unique to the Jewish people. The session opened with President Reuven Rivlin delivering a fiery speech in which he forcefully defended Israeli democracy. Rivlin said the Knesset is the representative of the sovereign people of Israel, and in this house we must remember that it is the people we must live up to, this wonderful people who we have been privileged to serve and represent.
The U.S. is urging the United Nations Security Council to extend the work of chemical weapons inspectors in Syria. The American ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, said that the renewal of the mandate for the Joint Investigative Mechanism is critical given the multiple chemical attacks that we've seen in Syria. She went on to say that we need to ensure accountability for these attacks, which have killed hundreds of innocent civilians.
The Hamas terror group has defiantly ignored U.S. and Israeli requests to disarm. Yahya Sinwar, the Gaza leader of the Islamic militants, vowed that his group will not relinquish their deadly arsenal and will not recognize Israel. But he did boast that they will decide when to wipe out the Jewish state. Sinwar welcomed the formation of a unity government with the Fatah-led Palestinian Authority, and he urged PA Chief Mahmoud Abbas to continue the campaign of terror against Israel. He stressed that the Palestinian issue will greatly advance if Fatah will use the weapons of resistance. Some European officials believe that a Palestinian unity government would be a positive step for the peace process. But the Palestinians themselves don't see it that way. Immediately after signing an agreement in Cairo, a Hamas leader said that Palestinian unity is vital so that the radical factions can all work together against the Zionist enterprise. Israel has announced that it cannot negotiate with Hamas until the terror group has disarmed. The United States agreed and insisted that any Palestinian government must commit to nonviolence, recognize the State of Israel, accept previous agreements, including the disarming of terrorists, and commit to peaceful negotiations.
And in a related story, Hamas is making moves to strengthen ties with Iran and renew its commitment to wage terror in Israel. According to the militia group's deputy chairman, Iran has agreed to continue its support for the resistance. Saleh al-Aruri was in Tehran recently, where he met with multiple senior Iranian officials, including a top advisor to the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The Palestinian official emphasized that the result of these meetings is the continuation of support from the Islamic Republic toward the war with Israel, which he said he hopes will continue until Israel is defeated. It is important to note that the Hamas leader himself mentioned that his visit to Iran violates Israel's condition for recognizing the Palestinian Unity Government.
Northern Israel has been hit with a barrage of rockets launched from Syria. During the past 6 years of the Syrian civil war, dozens of mortars and rockets were mistakenly fired into Israel. But this time it's different. The IDF believes this latest round was intentionally aimed at the Jewish state. The Army released a statement after 5 missiles were fired and 4 of them landed deep within Israeli territory. In response, the IDF destroyed 3 launching sites in Syria. Tensions remain high along the border, and many accuse Tehran of fueling the conflict. The commander of Iran's armed forces was in Syria at the time of the attack, signing an agreement for the two countries to strengthen military cooperation against what he called the Zionist American schemes.
An Arab village in Palestinian Authority territory has dedicated a memorial to Saddam Hussein. The town of Qalqilia has named a street after the ruthless Iraqi dictator and has erected a statue which depicts him holding a gun. An inscription on the memorial calls him the Master of Martyrs, and it is engraved with a well-known quote by him calling for the establishment of an Arab state from the river to the sea, a slogan often used by Hussein, which refers to the annihilation of Israel. An Arab community leader spoke at the statue's unveiling and called on the current Palestinian leadership to follow in the footsteps of arch-terrorists Yasser Arafat and Saddam Hussein, whom he hailed as their great leaders.
Israeli archaeologists announced that they have unearthed a massive section of the Western Wall in Jerusalem, which has been unseen for 1,700 years. Dr. Joe Uziel, Tehila Lieberman, and Dr. Avi Solomon presented their findings at a conference at Hebrew University, which marked 50 years of archaeological research since the reunification of the capital. They explained that over the last 2 years, they have been excavating beneath Wilson's Arch and have uncovered valuable information about the city of Jerusalem during the Roman occupation. The archaeologists reported that as they removed thick layers of dirt and debris, they exposed a massive portion of the Western Wall that was covered by garbage after the Romans sacked the Holy City. They also uncovered an ancient Roman theater-like structure hidden underground. The discovery is providing a never-before-seen window into daily public life in the Roman-conquered city.
Ziv Medical Center in northern Israel has been awarded a grant to continue treating Syrian children with hearing loss. The small hospital in Tzfat has treated more than 1,000 Syrians in the course of the civil war that has seen some of the most heinous human rights abuses in recent history. Staff at the facility report that 1 in every 3 children from Syrian combat zones are suffering a loss of hearing as a result of the explosions and shelling, and that they are providing them with testing, treatments, and surgeries. The continued treatment will now be possible through the generosity of Morris Khan, an Israeli philanthropist who has donated a 6-figure grant to keep the operations running.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has approved an Israeli-designed gene-altering therapy for the treatment of lymphoma. Developed by Kite Pharma, this cutting-edge procedure could revolutionize the way we fight cancer. Yescarta uses the patient's own T cells, which are extracted and genetically altered, to alienate and kill lymphoma. The T cells are then reinfused into the patient and immediately begin to fight against the cancer in the white blood cells. This protocol is effective against adult as well as childhood leukemia and holds a complete remission rate of 51%, which is significantly higher than other clinical trials. FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb said this marks another milestone in the development of a whole new scientific paradigm for the treatment of serious diseases. He added that in just a few decades, gene therapy has gone from being a promising concept to a practical solution for deadly and largely untreatable forms of cancer.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful day on our rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Roar Sorensen. He is the leader of Word of Life in Israel. Roar, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell our viewers a little bit about what is Word of Life.
So Word of Life is a Swedish-based organization, a church really, that has expanded and now has worked in many different nations around the world. Our focus is on teaching, really, Bible schools and teaching and educating Christians.
Is this primarily a European initiative or is it global?
It is European. As I said, it started in Sweden back in the 1980s, but it has become global, but it's still, the base is in Sweden.
One of the things that is interesting about Word of Life is that you bring groups to Israel. Why is it important to bring groups here?
Well, this started in 1987, and it was a direct call from God to go to Israel and to discover the roots of Christianity. So, of course, that is still the base of why we do our Israel tours, to discover the roots of Christianity, but also because we see it as very important for Christians to stand together with Israel. So we have both those aspects.
You also do a lot of different projects helping the less fortunate in Israel. Why do you think that's an important biblical mandate?
Well, as Christians, we have a debt to the Jewish people. And this is one way that we can, in a very practical way, show our gratitude. The Bible says, the New Testament, that salvation is of the Jews. So in this way, we can really express our gratitude to the Jewish people in a practical way.
Now, you yourself actually lived in Israel for 8 years. How was that as a Bible-believing Christian to live here, to be a part of the community of Jerusalem?
It was an amazing experience, and I must say that every day was like an adventure, and it still is. When I go back and forth all the time, to come to Israel is always, there's something new all the time. But one of the most dramatic experiences for me was to see that the Bible is still alive. I mean, the Bible was made back then, but its prophecies and the word is going in fulfillment today as we speak. So to be part of that was just an amazing experience.
Why do you think Bible-believing Christians should stand with the state of Israel?
Well, it goes back to what I already said, that this is our origin. I usually, when I teach, I say this, that if you could take salvation and put it in a box, you could write on it, label it, made in Israel. So that's why this is our original home, this is our spiritual home, and it's important for us that we understand it, that we have a revelation about it, and that we stand together with the Jewish people. It's just a correct attitude as a Christian.
You know, Word of Life has churches all across Europe, but also in Russia, has a huge foothold there. Do you think the fact that there are big churches for Word of Life in Russia that will have better relations with the country of Russia eventually?
It might be an influence. As of now, of course, even though the church is pretty big in Moscow, they are still a small percentage of the people in Russia, but in the end it might definitely have an influence, because we are working on many levels. When I say and I focus on the biblical part of why we should support Israel, that is not the only reason for to stand with Israel. There are many good reasons, including moral reasons, humanitarian reasons, pure logic, historical reasons. You can use many arguments, and if we work on all those levels, also politically, that can definitely change the situation, but it's a long time work.
You know, Word of Life was started many, many years ago by Ulk Elfman, and since the time it started as a small organization, and it's just blown up to be this huge organization. Do you think your support for Israel has had a role in that?
Definitely. The work for Israel was, at one point, it was the biggest activity at Word of Life. It was the one that generated also most support, and so throughout the years we have taken 15,000 people to Israel, and the Israel work then is very central at Word of Life. So there's no doubt that it's very important for the church as a whole.
Your base is in Scandinavia, yet we don't see a lot of political support out of Scandinavian countries. How can the grassroots support for Israel out of the Christian community affect change in that arena?
This is, again, a huge question, and it's true. It's not easy to live in Scandinavian countries, especially Sweden today, and to become a pro-Israel person, because the society in general is so negative. We believe that we can have an influence, and now we are really going for the youth, because we see that the youth has not really understood this, and the youth also has challenges that we, at least when I grew up, I didn't have, where society today is, you're bombarded with negative opinions about Israel. So it's much harder today to stand for Israel, but if we work with the youth, I do believe that we can affect the change.
Roar, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
The message that I always end with is say something good about Israel. And this is important. It's very simple, but it's a point where we all can start. Because many say that, well, I don't know anything about Israel. I don't have the knowledge, and it's so complicated. Well, there's one point that we all have in common. We can always start here. Say something good about Israel. And I guarantee you that when you do that, it will open doors, it will open for debate, and you will be standing out, and you will get a lot of attention, but you will be able to make a change.
Thank you, Roar, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Hello and welcome to the Return to Zion with Keren Hayesod. I'm Eliezer Moody Sandberg, World Chairman of Keren Hayesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. it was foretold that the children of Israel would return to their land on the wings of eagles. This is why it was so important for Keren HaYesod to support the establishment of Israel's first airline. I hope you enjoy. God bless you from Jerusalem.
The divine promise of bringing the children of Israel to their land was given to Moses at the foot of Mount Sinai. I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to me, as it is written in the book of Exodus, is a prophecy that has sparked the immigration for 3,000 years. And with the establishment of the Zionist movement and the State of Israel, it has begun to be fulfilled. Eagles made of steel of El Al Airlines have taken to the skies of the Holy Land, carrying with them hundreds of thousands of new immigrants to Israel. They have come from Yemen and Iraq, from North Africa and Ethiopia, from Russia and Ukraine. El Al, Israel's flagship carrier, was established with the support of the donors of Keren HaYesod, a global organization authorized by the Israeli government to raise funds for Israel's most important priority projects. Most urgent is the task of bringing Jews to Israel from countries of distress where they face danger. Just after Israel's establishment, nearly 50,000 Jews were brought to Israel from the ancient Yemenite Jewish community. In 1951 and 1952, more than 130,000 Jews from Iraq were brought home to safety in Israel. El Al Airlines was a key player in these airlifts and in waves of immigration since. Perhaps no one better epitomizes Israel's immigration story than Aryeh Oz. He was accepted into the pilot school of the Israel Air Force and earned his pilot's wings in 1956, and after completing his military service, joined El Al Airlines. He returned to the Air Force in 1991 to fly a jumbo jet taking Ethiopian Jews home to Israel in Operation Solomon.
We were about to evacuate 14,500 Ethiopian Jews from Addis Ababa to Tel Aviv. I flew a 747. We had 760 seats, and I sat on the floor between the seats. We had 1,087 souls on board. I said it's our obligation as the Jewish people to bring everybody to Israel. I felt so happy, that I took part in an operation like this. When we descended and came over Jerusalem, there was not one person in the cockpit who had no tears in his eyes.
For nearly 100 years, Keren HaYesod's vision has turned the dream of the return of the Jewish people to Israel into reality and remains at the center of efforts to sustain and develop a flourishing Jewish homeland in fulfillment of biblical prophecy.
Every time that when I made my walk around in order to see that the aircraft is serviceable, I always looked up and saw the Star of David and said to myself, gee, I'm flying El Al. This is El Al. This is Israel. This is the Jewish people.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
As Israel's ambassador to the United States several years ago, I tried to visit at least 2 American college campuses every month. And it was exceedingly rare that I would visit a college campus and not be met by anti-Israel protests. Some of these protests exceeded the limits of legitimate protest and burst into threats of violence, near violence, and the denial of my right to free expression and the denial of the audience rights to actually hear somebody speak. These groups, which represented a coalition of extreme left-wing anti-Zionist groups, were denying the right of all college students to the most basic service of an American college, which is to provide freedom of ideas, a free exchange of ideas, the market of ideas. Denying that market, closing that market down, but closing that market down on only one issue, and that is Israel. And because it is exclusive to this issue, these efforts to deny the right of pro-Israel speakers, pro-Israel audience to hear a pro-Israel message is not just anti-Israel, it's anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism, by definition, is the attempt to single out Jews, in this case a Jewish state, for particular demonization and vilification. And that's precisely what is going on here. We in Israel are deeply concerned by reports of rising anti-Semitism on American campuses, anti-Semitism that is almost always, but not exclusively, disguised as anti-Zionism and presented as anti-Zionism. And we understand that many American Jewish students already feel discomforted by this situation. It is imperative that American campuses, universities, other academic institutions, there are 7,000 of them in the United States, make every effort to ensure that all ideas can be discussed freely on campus and to fight, not just with words, but with deeds, all vestiges of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism.
Lift up your eyes and look around. All your children gather and come to you. The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Anti-Semitism threatens many of the Jews. We must rescue them before the window of opportunity slams shut. Bless Israel by supporting Keren Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible.
Let us bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
On your walls, O Jerusalem, I have set watchmen. All the day and all the night, they shall never be silent. You who put the Lord in remembrance, take no rest. And give him no rest until he establishes Jerusalem and makes it a praise in the earth.
My name is Edith Muriu. I come from Nairobi, Kenya, that's in East Africa. And the first time I heard about ICEJ was in the year 2014. I never was that kind of person who prays for the nations, really. So it started for me last year.
The Isaiah 62 Prayer Initiative is a global movement unifying the nations with prayer for Israel. Every Wednesday, ICEJ staff and prayer partners around the world gather to intercede on behalf of the nation of Israel.
Didn't know about the prayer initiative before I signed up. But when I found out about it, I was very excited about it because that was something that I could easily do because, you know, I'm praying every day. And sometimes you have money, sometimes you don't have money, but praying, you can pray every day. I think it is very much on the heart of God that prayer be made for his city, because the Bible says over and over again that in Jerusalem I have put my name there forever. So we can't just forget about it and go on with the rest of our lives as though it didn't matter. If God decided that this is his city, then we need to also get interested in what is happening here. So I committed to pray for Israel, and that is my service to God and to his people. I would say to anybody considering a partnership that go for it, because this is a good ground. Good because you can actually see where the money is going. They're good stewards of what is given to them. In terms of prayer, you can never go wrong with praying for people, and it is God's will that all men be saved. So keep praying, keep praying. And if the Bible says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, don't give God peace until He establishes Zion. When you read all these things about Jerusalem, even the heavenly Jerusalem that will come down on this Jerusalem, I mean, get interested in those kind of things. So come for the tours that are organized by ICJ. Come for the feast. Come on, volunteer, do some service. Meet the body of Christ and meet other Israeli believers and see what God is doing in the land. So I encourage the partnership, yes, in every possible way.
Israel is coming back to life, and you can be a part of its growth. The ICEJ's Forest of Life is bringing beauty to the landscape of Israel and also bringing joy and comfort to the survivors of the Holocaust. There are close to 180,000 Holocaust survivors still alive in Israel, and nearly 1/4 of them are living below the poverty line. Many survivors have multiple health problems, struggle financially, and are dealing with overwhelming loneliness. In 2010, the Christian Embassy partnered with an Israeli organization to establish the Haifa Home for Holocaust Survivors, which provides 70 residents with housing, meals, and full-time care in a community of hope. The Forest of Life is an opportunity to support Holocaust survivors while bringing life to the land of Israel. For your gift of $500, you can plant an olive tree in the ICEJ Forest of Life, located in the hills of Jerusalem. As a sign of appreciation, your name will be included on the Forest of Life wall in the ICEJ Haifa Home for Holocaust Survivors. You will also receive an official certificate stating that a tree was planted in your name. You may choose to make the donation on behalf of a friend or relative whose name you would like to honor, or you can be a blessing as a church community and purchase a tree. Go to icej.org/Forest of Life for more information.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.